Women play a lot of games, but women don't identify themselves as gamers. So
I
yeah,
think they should, but yes,
I do. And one of the things I'm trying to get around is that idea that gamer means male. And the media's done that. Gamers didn't do that. The media did that.
right.
The
They said
media,
we're seeing the death of an identity. When those articles were dropping, they were defining this identity and saying, this is what a gamer is, and we need to, get rid of that as somehow the identity. I'm like, but you've just defined it for us, right? I think most people who just play games are gamers. It's that simple. If you play a game, you're a gamer.
that was a big wake up call for me. It was a real snapshot on the problems with feminist messaging. I admit I did have moments where it was like, do I want to be associated with this? It would be much easier for me to just go, nope, 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 not calling myself a feminist. Nope, nope, I don't condone that, right? Would be so much easier. And there are people that do that. I've talked to them. There are women who say, I don't call myself a feminist anymore because that, I don't subscribe to that. Now, I think it may be because I've played too many games where you're like this, no one understands you, you are hated and feared, you are an X-Men, but outcast, but Grey Warden, redeem your kind through acts of heroism. And I guess in a sense, I'm trying to play the hero in that regard. I'm trying to not take the easy way out. And that is definitely informed by the games I've played, the games I've loved to play, that whole thing of, oh, you are tainted, you are a cursed child, and by the end you're the hero, right?
Right.
I
That's a trope itself.
The elves and the dwarves don't like each other, right? It's the Taurians and the Solarians that sort of have this tension in Mass Effect. There's all these races, there's some kind of blood feud somewhere.
Right. There's animosity because of race. Right.
And I find it so odd that in a genre defined by stories about getting along with people you may have ideological and traditional tensions with, we don't take that lesson. Because I know it's embedded very strongly with me, right? Because I've got Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, Planescape Torment, going all the way back, Quests for Glory, like they all kind of had this stranger in a strange land. Even the Fallout games or the Skyrim games, the game's racist. Yes, Skyrim is racist. They are the Nords. They are a very racist people. They look askance on Khajiit. I always play as a Khajiit. So, I was actually
a cat person. What a surprise.
What a shock, right? I think that those moments in games where you didn't just watch something and go, I can check my phone, or I can just close my eyes and pretend it's not happening. I can go to my happy place. You're actively engaged. You have to select inputs based on what you're seeing from the screen. You can't ignore it in the same way. And I am really surprised that hasn't trickled down into our interactions with each other. It's something I'm on an active journey right now to try to understand. I don't understand why the games press thought it was a good idea to declare the death of the gamer identity. Right. I know why they did it. I don't know why, even from a rhetorical perspective, they thought that was a good idea.
It seems to me, they were virtue signaling in some way, but I don't think it was a good idea. Maybe they did think it was, but it seems to me like the good that came out of this is that it broke the back of the press's, what would you call it there? The respectability, I guess. That gamers started to not trust them, and in a way, I think that's a good thing, because they started saying, "Well, I don't trust the gamer press. I trust my friends. I trust, I trust the reviews I see online. I trust other people other than the game press." And to me, that's a good kind of, breaking up. It's almost like the monopoly that felt like it existed.
It will eventually be good, but what we're in right now is our own form of a crash. We're experiencing the crash of games journalism.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. What Gamergate did was, and now some subreddits have gone, "Brr, they said Gamergate." What it did was it drained all the money out of games writing. The Within 2 years, the going rate for an article freelance went from $250 to $100. Now, $250, you can make an all right living. Not great, but all right. You cannot make a living on $100 an article. There just isn't enough time in the week to drum up that much business. So in the short term, all the people who actually considered it as a career left, because it's not a career anymore, it's a soapbox. And so short term, all that's left are the ideologues that nobody liked in the first place, because they are fueled by their righteous fury, right? It isn't just about the money from them. Part of it is class. They don't need the money. They think they do, but that's because they live in San Francisco and pay $4,500 a month for an apartment,
Right.
you know. But they are funded by some of these progressive companies that are willing to lose money because of a greater culture war. They don't have the same dollars and cents basis that some of these other services do. So they're still standing for now. I think it's an unsustainable model. But then you've pushed the populist review into the pre-existing services like IGN, like GameSpot, and they do what they do, right? They do what they do well, but they do a very specific type of thing, and they're very advertiser friendly. Their primary loyalty is to their sponsors, not
Yes,
the
yeah.
consumers.
I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah, and it's great that Patreon is a thing now, because, you know, guys like Dave Rubin are doing exceptionally well, and so he can do long form interviews that YouTube determines is, you know, not appropriate for monetizing. But people like me, you know, we're barely getting by right now, and it's unfortunate because in games right now, money is speech, and these people, and I've talked to them, they are some of the most devoted gamers on the planet, but they don't have the money, or they don't perceive themselves to have the money to pay $1 a month on Patreon. That dollar actually matters to them. And on the one hand, I can go, oh, come on, you can afford $1. On the other hand, whoa, hold on, intersectional, check my own privilege. How do I know? Like, how do I know they're not deeply in debt? And I don't want them to give up the games they love that they're waiting and buying for $5 on a Steam sale. You know, if they're giving me $1 a month, they're giving up 2 games on Steam during the summer and winter sales. I can't
Right.
ask them to do that. I can't ask them to take money away from the actual games to pay me to talk about them. That's foolish. But the money is consolidated in the very places that I don't think Gamergate wanted it to go. And I've had discussions with high profile Gamergaters. I'm not telling you anything I haven't told them. And I think that in the long term, I have said from the beginning this needed to happen. And it's up to those of us who are games analysts to get better, to be more fair to developers, to be more fair for consumers, just to overall get our egos out of it. But right now, because there's no money in it, ego's all that's left.
I think that's a brilliant analysis, something I had not personally thought about. To me, seeing the breakup of games journalists or journalism was kind of a good thing. You know, as a developer, I was like, well, this is good. Let's shake that thing up and let people go to where because this is how I've always been it, or for a long time. I'd go to the gaming press to find out news about the industry, what's coming out, when is it coming out. When it came time for reviews, I wouldn't go there. I didn't trust them. I'd worked in development long enough not to trust them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go and I would read Steam reviews, or I'd go and read, personal reviews and an experience, but they'd go into depth and rarely give you a 9 out of 10. They'd just say, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, pros and cons. And I'm like, that's the sort of review I want to read.
But most people go to Metacritic as their first stop.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? Executives do that within the game industry. They're like, in fact, they'll put that as one of the things that is a target for you. And I don't know if this is public knowledge, but
oh, it is.
They'll say, yeah, you need to get an 8 out of 10 on this to earn your bonus or to earn.
I actually
And
got
that's
in trouble.
ridiculous, right? Yeah.
I got in trouble. The Gamergate people actually freaked out on me and bombarded me on Twitter because they found a comedy hosting gig I'd done where I was actually doing a routine on this very issue. I was borrowing from Chris Rock.
Yeah.
You know, I love hip hop music, but I'm tired of defending it. I love games, but I'm tired of defending them. And one
Right.
of the things I talked about was this monetized review process. And I said, now that I know this, that if game developers need an 8 to get their bonus, I can't give them a 7.5. I can't live with that. And people said, you're inflating your review scores. I'm like, excuse me? 0.5 is a distinction without a difference. I can't tell you the difference between a 7 and a 7.5 or a 7.5 and an 8. That is a feeling. That is,
Right.
and because I grew up poor, my own conscience does not allow me to go, I am going to deny someone cash that they're going to use to feed their families and pay off their student debts and all that stuff on something that really doesn't matter much. And this is the thing. There is no difference between a 7.5 game and an 8 game. And then I found out I was wrong. The threshold is actually 8.5 now at a lot of companies.
Yeah,
So,
it depends on the company. And
yeah.
the thing is, it's not universal, right? That
Nope.
doesn't happen at every game company, but it does come out, and it comes out enough that it's significant for everybody who's working on a AAA title where they're thinking about, my Metacritic score is really important to me personally. And yeah, so then that's why we start to have that backlash. Developers saying, well, I don't really like the games journalists because some of them gave me a bad score, or they can actually make a financial impact on me that's not related to sales, that's totally related just to their opinion.
And
that hurts.
I get that it came from a good place. I get that it did. It was a way to reward critically acclaimed games that didn't necessarily sell well. But
Right.
I do have an issue because I've seen the quality of the games press and it shocks me. I mean, I have had to submit to the editorial process. This is part of the reasons I went independent and went on YouTube. And how do you tell your editor they don't know what they're talking about, right? Like, how do you have that fight? You can't. The editor has the ultimate power. And I got sick of seeing these editors at these major game sites write, these guys are writing articles about women in gaming, and then when I pitch an article about my experiences in gaming, oh, I think we've done enough on the women in gaming topic for a while.
Oh, and yeah.
So there's a gatekeeping that's going on, and let's face it, if the games press were really arbiters, and I'm going to get in trouble for all of this, I know I am, I just don't care anymore.
Well, you can always edit it out, right?
I don't do that. I'm
Yeah,
too lawful
you're
good.
open.
I'm
Yeah.
too lawful good to use selective editing. That's another way I get into trouble. But if the games press really knew how to create diversity in the workforce, the games press would be more diverse. It's not. They're not practicing what they preach. If you look at the hiring rosters, Polygon hired the founder of the Mary Sue to cover TV. That's not a woman writing about games. She's writing about Game of Thrones and Westworld. Those aren't video games.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they're not walking the walk. And it's all well and good to say we need more women in gaming. Well, how about this? Give us a job. You know? And let's face it. Well, you know, they don't have the skills. Yes, they have the skills. What they don't have is the piece of paper. And some of the greatest game designers working in the industry do not have a Bachelor of Computer Science.
That's true.
Most of the games in game design don't even require a computer science degree. You need to take art, you know? You need to take business management. You need to take those things because there's way more artists than coders on games nowadays. And so they are steering women into these schools that aren't actually going to, unless they want to be a coder, but most people want to tell stories through games. They don't want to be the person that punches the numbers in. With game engines, we don't need as much of that anymore, right? And all that software stuff, all that hardware stuff, those can be trained on the job, which they're doing anyway, because whenever a new game engine comes out, the entire workforce has to be trained on that game engine. So the minute you start saying, we need and this happens in regular media as well, we need a BSc or this particular degree from these 5 or 6 schools that we consider the cream of the crop, you are marginalizing Black people because they're not there. You are marginalizing Hispanic people because they're not there. If you really want to bring people into this world, you have to go in and bring people into this world. There is no shortcut for that. I am not seeing the games press do that. And they're the ones saying developers should. You know, the developers, I'm not talking about the developers here, I'm talking about the games press. If they think this is so damn important, why don't you have a female editor? Why don't you have people of color in your management structure? Where are they? Because one of the things I found about diversity and inclusion, if you have women at your company, you'll get more women at your company. If you have more people of color, you will get more people of color. And this is when people start saying, well, why is that important? I don't know. Ask the games press. I'm just saying, if you really believed in this, you've got a funny way of showing it. That's what I'm saying.
That's really interesting, because I hadn't thought about that on the games press side. Now on the development side, I believe that they strive for a meritocracy as much as possible.
I think they do, but the scouting isn't where it needs to be. You wanna somebody to advise your game, you call Anita. She's spoken at pretty much every game studio. Where's the diversity of thought? Going back to what you were saying before about that, we need to play to that Metacritic score. It's stifling innovation.
I agree. Yeah.
It's not letting developers experiment with format, because you guys know what the winning formula is to get that 9, right? You have a familiar pick up and play gameplay configuration. So weapons on it's either Halo or Call of Duty. So primary weapons on the trigger, grenades on the bumper, or you use the 2 triggers. Those are your 2 options. You're not allowed to change anything else, even if it may make sense. Because if that one prominent reviewer doesn't like your change, 7.5 out of 10, and there goes your Metacritic score, because certain ones are weighted, right? Games are not just built to appease critics now. They are built to appease an elite subset of critics that have greater emphasis on that Metacritic ranking. It is a subjective meritocracy, which is no meritocracy at all, right? And let's face it, I can't think of any of them who aren't male. I can't think of an elite game reviewer who is female.
Well, yeah, you would know better than I do. So
yeah, because I would follow them if there was a big voice. I mean, because Lee Alexander doesn't review games; she writes.
She left, right? She didn't she leave the game industry?
Even back in the day, I mean, she founded her own thing. I don't know what happened, but even back in the day, she was an essay writer. She didn't really review games. There's a couple of women I know who write for Destructoid. I can't think of a high-ranking woman at Polygon that's reviewing games. I know they're there. Oh, maybe Patricia. She's probably the highest ranking. Patricia Hernandez is probably the highest ranking, but you don't know that you're going to draw her on your game. So what, people are going to start building their games whether Arthur Geese likes it? Oh, dear God. That's like the Handmaid's Tale writ large in video games. Like talk about a patriarchy. You are creating games based on the opinions of 24 men in game reviews who have an undue influence on a Metacritic score. That's the reality of gaming right now.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. I do think that the industry is changing. It's reacting.
It is.
You
But
know,
it's reacting. It's not acting yet. We will.
yeah.
We will start acting. And I mean, I think discussions of substance like this are a beginning of the action, because you have to understand what somebody else means by a term before you can start debating the term. And I think that the developer side of this whole thing has gotten short shrift, because the fan base has been heard from. They've been maligned badly, and that's not good. But at least we know collectively what portions of the market think. There's all this research and focus groups and all this stuff giving that data. What we don't have is an inside the actor's studio of gaming. GDC is this closed off thing.
Which is going on right now. Yeah.
Yeah, but you need $5,000 just to get down there, because if it's in San Francisco, if they wanted to not be classist, they'd go and hold it in like Detroit or something like that, where you can get a hotel room dirt cheap, or start holding them middle of the country. Start holding them in Atlanta, where it's an airline hub. At least LA for E3 is an airline hub, so all the people from Japan have a direct flight. That makes sense to me, but San Francisco?
Well, it's San Jose, isn't it? But that's not that much.
It's still the
different.
valley. It's still that Palo Alto. And
yes, yeah.
Silicon Valley got to get out of the valley. They got to go talk to the rest of the country, because that bubble shows quite badly. The only reason I have not gone to GDC every year is it is too much money to get that annoyed. It's game designers talking to game designers about the game design process. And there is a purpose for that. That's great. And I know people go down there to kind of schmooze and pick up work. But we need somewhere that isn't as market focused as E3, but isn't as insider as GDC, that actually talks about the process of making games, like we've sort of touched on here, for the public to understand. Because I see my job when I review a game is to tell people, this is what it is. This is what it's like. This is what it does well. This is what it does not so well. And I've gotten to the point where I call my segments review-ish, because what it's lacking is a recommendation. I'll say I liked it. I won't say go buy it. And I think that's kind of the thumbs up, thumbs down, or 4 stars, 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5 sort of thing.
Right.
That works in movies, because a movie costs you $12. It's a low risk. You buy a game and it sucks, and you bought it at launch. What's it up to now? $80? That's what it is in Canada. It's obscenely expensive.
Some of those AAAs, they're up there, $60, $70 easy. Yeah.
And that is someone's disposable income for a month sometimes.
Right.
They need to be damn sure they're going to like it. And that's part of the reason they turn to Let's Plays. The thing about Let's Plays is you got to be so careful about spoilers. People will play the whole game for people. And watching a game and playing a game are not the same experience.
Yeah, they're not.
So we still need good reviewers who can translate what it feels like to do something instead of somebody watching it. Because some of my favorite games to play, I admit, are not especially interesting to watch. And not everybody's like that. Esports is becoming this huge thing. But see, I think the pull towards esports is also kind of a disruptive feature of the industry right now, because we're losing co-op features to appeal to the esports community. And I get it. I get the business decision, but I didn't play Halo 5. It was the first Halo game I did not play. There's no couch co-op. And that's a game I play with my husband. So they didn't just lose one player. Yes, they lost one sale, but they lost 2 players appealing to esports. Gears of War, we still play because we can play together. Those are the experiences we want for those games. And if they had built a Halo-style arena shooter from the ground up specifically for esports and kept, like, why can't your multiplayer just run in 60 frames and have your campaign run in 30 if it's a resource problem? I don't understand that thinking. But obviously there was a decision made based on, you know, that very vocal subset of the internet that 60 frames are bust. You know, it becomes a huge space problem. I mean, I have to capture games in 60 frames per second, and the files are massive. Like, I can't imagine what it's like optimizing those things.
Oh, it's a nightmare, and you have to scale things back to try and achieve those frame rates, right? You have to reduce you either have to have a super high-end machine or super high-end processor of some kind, or you just have to pull everything out and strip it all down to its bare essentials so you can get the frame rate up. That being said, for me, I love the esports growth because to me that's a growth area, right? It's bringing it. There's enough room for everything is where I'm at. Let's do esports. I think it's great when people can make their living playing video games. However it is, whether they're on Twitch, whether they're playing esports, if you can make your living because you're good enough at games and you play enough games, PewDiePie, whatever, just playing games.
There's that and thinking instead of the or thinking again.
Yeah, I'm an and guy.
Yeah, I'm an and guy as well. And it's like, so why can't we have esports and, casual story-driven campaign?
Yes, yeah.
The business sensing
cost.
It always seems to only chase one dinosaur at a time. I remember that old, where the guys with a little spear and then run after one dinosaur and they'd all kind of stab him in the legs and the dinosaur would go foop with the tail and they go and then they'd go running after another one. That's what the games industry looks like sometimes. Like, guys, keep this base. Don't be New Coke.
Right.
Like, people have forgotten the lesson of New Coke. Like, have classic Coke and then have New Coke. Don't just strip everything off the shelves to force people to adopt the new hotness.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I've seen it my entire 20 years. That marketing drives what games get made a lot. That they'll say, this is really hot. There's, this style of game is really hot. We need a game like that. And then everybody will go make a bunch of that. Oh, green aliens are really hot. Let's go make, a game featuring the green aliens or whatever. And this happens again and again.
Cavemen. Yeah, cavemen are really hot now. We've gotten a ton of caveman games recently, or cave woman games, more accurate. It's true though. Remember when the action adventure platformer was dead? Yeah,
that was dead. RPGs have been dead. The Telltale style adventure games, those were dead. All of these at some point, marketing made a determination because they saw, well, the sales on that last one didn't live up to the sales on this other thing. We're going to wipe it out. RTSs were dead, and then they come back around when somebody has the gumption to give it a go. And I don't know.
And do it well. It's all about execution and marketing.
Yeah. Yep.
You can't market a shooter the same way you market an RTS, the same way you market an RPG. Because in a shooters are easy to market. I think that's part of the reason they do so well, is you can kind of go, here's the thing. And you can show chopper, that spin out.
Right.
That's the game. That is the experience, putting you in that. Who cares about the story in a shooter game? Like, really, the dialogue is more important than the story in a shooter. Whereas an RTS game, you can't effectively show strategy in 90 seconds or 30 seconds if you're buying a TV spot. RPGs, game publicists are so afraid of presenting story that RPGs suffer. That's why everything's 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, far fewer people played The Witcher 1 than 3.
I'm in that camp. I didn't play Witcher until Witcher 3. Yeah.
A lot of people, and part of that was distribution. They just sort of it started as a PC game that Microsoft picked up. Good for them. And they got a big marketing push on 2. But then 3 was their first, I would say, full-blown AAA game. Yeah. And so that was the first experience, but why it was a known commodity. There were all these advocates of the franchise by that point telling their friends to play this game. Well, that's doing marketing's job for them. Like, you're not actually introducing people to new IPs in an effective way. And unfortunately, the only way to really do it properly is to have a cynical but effective working relationship with an ethical games press. And we don't have that right now. And this is of grave concern to me because people watch a PewDiePie video for PewDiePie. I don't know how many copies of Amnesia he sold. You know, it got to the point where developers had to ask guys like that, can you please not show the whole game? And, you know, there's kind of a performance art to that, but I don't know how many copies he actually sold. Brand awareness, yeah, okay. But being aware of a brand and actually getting that conversion to purchase it, I don't know, it's the same thing, right? You would think if Let's Plays sold games, then Amnesia, Machine for Pigs, Five Nights at Freddy's, all these things, these would be selling at the level of maybe not a Grand Theft Auto, but certainly up there with AAA, if this experience actually moved copies.
Well, the thing is, I think it probably does.
I'm
my opinion. Yeah,
I'm curious.
And not, I think, not because necessarily, you know, PewDiePie has played it, but because it gets word of mouth going. Have you seen this video? Have you seen what's going on? People talk to their friends. They make their own versions. They imitate.
See, that imitation is what sells the game, because people have to buy the game to make the reaction video for the game. It becomes it becomes the gaming equivalent of an ice bucket challenge.
Right. Yes.
And Five Nights at Freddy's works well because the experience is relatively short. It's in what, like 3-minute chunks?
Yep, it's pretty quick stuff. Yep.
Yeah, now you can play on the tablet. Something like Undertale, yeah, it's meme central, but that's a long game and the final fight is pretty challenging. So I know Undertale did very well. I'd just be interested to see the research inherent in, do these things actually sell games, or do they create a separate spectator base for the IP? Because if that's so, don't fight it, make merchandise. You know, make Flowey from Undertale, make the damn bear from Five Nights at Freddy's, let people buy that merchandise so that the spectator portion of the ecosystem can actually give you some money. I think, I mean, that's what the thing about Disney Infinity. I'm sure there's a ton of figures sitting in people's homes. They don't own the game. They just like the character.
Yeah, that definitely happened. We knew there were people who were collecting. Yeah.
Yeah, because the sculpts were cool. You know, they were very dynamic. They were very alive, the way they were posed. And from your guys' perspective, do you care? I mean, you still got that $10 to $14 for the figure. You're still making money.
Right. We did not care.
Yeah.
You buy it for whatever reason you want. Do whatever you want. Go melt it down. I don't care. You know, you bought it.
You're selling happy. It made them happy. Everybody's happy. I mean, this is the sort of outside the box thinking that I wish games did more, instead of coming from this paradigm of fear of, oh God, the world is ending because things are changing. You know, I'm so sick of hearing the death of the gamer, the death of AAA, the death of this, the death of that. We must all be zombies or vampires because we're still here, even though we've allegedly died about 6 times.
Yep.
What does that do to morale in a studio, though? Constantly hearing this stuff.
It's pretty crippling when you feel like you're being encouraged to, you know, chase whatever the new hot item is. What's the hot new thing?